Hello, and welcome to a little chat we've got with two of our soloists for Heroic Handel, the exciting virtual project we've got coming up on the 18th of July. And we thought this would be a great opportunity to chat to John Holland Avery and Charlotte Bowden about the amazing music they're going to be singing, about the Handel they're going to be singing in this project. Both of these singers have been members of Ibrakan for a number of years. John is a founder member. So he's been with us for the whole 8 years, 2012 at the University of York with myself. And Lottie, I was looking at the other day, you first sang with us in November 2014, and ironically wasn't a piece of Baroque music, it was Britain's Ceremony of Carols. And then you've been a regular member ever since, which is wonderful. And yeah, so today really is to just have a brief chat about the arias that you're singing in the project. So two fantastic arias that are going to be performed in Heroic Handel. We've got one from Ronaldo and one from Giulio Cesare, and we're going to hear a little bit about them. So the first question I'll send over to John first. What made you choose this aria? When we were starting out on this project, it was pretty much a free-for-all in terms of when I messaged the musicians, well, what music are we going to do? And yeah, so John, what made you choose this aria from Ronaldo?
I remember we did a recital in Ely for Ely Gin, I think, possibly a year or two ago. And we decided we wanted to come up with some Italian music, but maybe Handel Italian repertoire, which we don't normally perform. So I had this aria in the back of my head. I heard it ages ago, probably like 2010 Cardiff Sing of the World, I think. Heard it just in the competition, and I thought, wow, that's a great aria. It's really exciting, really kind of exciting music. But that's too high. I can't sing that. So basically, it's kind of been like a sort of journey to actually find a proper opportunity to be able to sing it and to practice it and get better at singing this kind of range.
Absolutely. You've reminded me of that because I forgot that we performed this before, didn't we, in the EDB concert? Yeah, gosh, that slipped my mind, but that'd be fantastic to do it with full forces again. So we'll talk a little bit about what's going on in Ronaldo in a second. You can tell us all about that, the setting the scene for us. But Lottie, same question to you. What kind of made you pick this amazing aria by Handel?
So this opera, Giulio Cesare, really features the soprano as a very important character. Handel loved his sopranos, and in this opera she has 8 different arias. Cleopatra is the character, and when I was choosing which one I wanted to feature, I was thinking about them, and a lot of them are more showy in texture and style. There's more percussion and trumpets and things going on, but this is a really important aria in the plot, because this is the point where she really forms an alliance with Giulio Cesare, and her plan finally starts to come to fruition. So maybe we'll talk a bit more about the plot here, but I thought it was quite important to have an aria where something really changes in the plot, and she as a character is really showing that she's quite strong and she's quite clever here. She's using all of her wiles to really get what she wants.
Fantastic, yeah. And I think actually these two arias are very contrasting, aren't they? John, turning to yours, and we'll talk about the scene in a second. Obviously, it's very heroic in the D major, trumpets, timpani, oboes, all blaring away. And then obviously with Lottie, it's completely different and amazing orchestral settings for both of them. We mentioned the trumpets and things of Ronaldo, but with the aria that Lottie's singing, 2 orchestras. One I think was originally to be in the pit, and one on the stage. And as you'll talk about the setting of the scene, the kind of exotic instruments that he uses, particularly the viola da gamba. So it might be quite interesting when you see this performance, I guess, that we're kind of cloning some of the musicians. So some of the musicians get to play 2 parts, which they wouldn't usually do. So we'll hear about that in a second. And Lottie, you talked about Handel loving his female sopranos, which he absolutely did. And there's a couple of amazing stories that I love about these two operas. The first one for Giulio Cesare is that the soprano who sang Cleopatra first was Francesca Cuzzoni. And there's that great story that she apparently refused to sing one of the arias because it was written, I think, originally for another singer, and that's where it comes from, that Handel threatened to throw her out the window at that point. So, but this, of course, is virtual, so there's no chance of that happening. And then, John, the story I absolutely love about Rinaldo, so great choices with operas, is that obviously Rinaldo was the first Italian opera that he did in London in 1711. And for kind of great spectacle, they released a load of sparrows into the theatre. And there's a review at the time, I can't remember the exact way that they described it, but basically the audience were complaining that the sparrows were cooing on their heads during the performance. So I think you chose great operas there for a good story as well. But of course, those two operas were huge hits. Obviously, Rinaldo being the first one, London audiences have never seen anything like that, let alone the musical side of things, but also the stagecraft. All the amazing Italian stagecraft, which I guess had started to come about a little bit with Purcell, but certainly not to the extent that we see in a Handel opera. And then obviously Giulio Cesare is a little later, like 1720, 1724, something like that. So he's in his real prime, I guess, at this point. He was churning out, fantastic opera after fantastic opera. So amazing choices. Let's set the scene then. John, we were talking off air about it's quite a complicated plot, I think, Rinaldo. So it'd be good for you to kind of set the scene and what your aria is telling everybody about, really.
Sure. Well, we're actually in the early stages of Act 1 still, and this is the first mention of Argante, who is king of the Saracen army. Saracens being a European writer word for Arabs as they were viewed in Crusader era. Argante is king of Jerusalem, and the Saracen army are parked outside, and Argante comes out of Jerusalem on, it says in the score actually, on a triumphal chariot pulled by horses, followed by a great number of guards on foot and men on horses. And he's all coming out to approach Goffredo, who is one of the generals for, he's actually the general captain of the Christian army. So he's coming out to meet his enemy, if you like, to call a truce. But it's kind of very odd text, because whilst it's very triumphant and so on, he's talking about the hissing of snakes, and to my mind, arias that they can portray a different kind of reality from what they might be experiencing. It's almost like he's really worried about going to meet Goffredo, the captain of the Christian army. There's this kind of weird thing going where the music is amazingly triumphant, but he's singing about the hissing of snakes, and he's hearing all these snakes around him. And it's like, that is not a healthy state of mind that this guy's in. So it's a very kind of convoluted but exciting first mention of Argente in the opera.
Fantastic. Yeah, great to set the scene there. I think it's an opera I don't really know a huge amount about. I'm happy to admit, obviously, the big hit from that isn't what we're singing, the Lascia, of course. But it'll be great to present a bit of Rinaldo that people may not have heard before, with all the trumpets and the pomp that comes with that. So that's super. Thanks, John. And then Lottie, do you want to set the scene more with what Cleopatra is up to at this part of the opera for you?
Yes. So this opera, there's a lot of intrigue and sort of political battle and warfare going on. Cleopatra is the queen of Egypt, but she sort of rules hand in hand with her brother Ptolemy, who is a bit of a tyrant, and he really runs everything. So when Julius Caesar arrives, she sees an opportunity with this handsome young general where she can hopefully win him over and enlist his help in overthrowing Ptolemy's tyrannical reign. So at this point, I think this comes at the beginning of Act 2, she's decided to disguise herself as a beautiful maid, and she calls herself Lydia, which is actually my sister's name. Interesting. And so at this point, she is seducing him as Lydia so that she can get him to fall in love with her, but without arousing any suspicions in the sort of politics of the court. And as you said before, there's quite a lot of exotic instruments going on. What I really love about this aria, which I think makes it quite interesting to sing and also to listen to, is that because it's very stately and there's a really broad variety of what you can do with it in terms of when you return to the A section, there's a lot of space to decorate with ornaments and just really show her character in the way that she changes it as she comes to the A section again. So I think that'll be quite interesting to see what we do with that. But after this point, she gains his trust and his love, and she joins forces with him. Towards the end, there's a moment where she sings a beautiful aria, which is very famous, called Piangerò la sorte mia, where she believes that he's died, and you can really tell that she has invested so much in this event, and then it comes about that he's not actually dead, and she joins forces with his army and they win against her brother, and then he dies, and so it's all happy in the end. But yes, so I hope that all made sense.
Yeah, sets the scene perfectly, which is fantastic, and I'm sure with both these arias, again, because I said they're so contrasting, we really see Handel in different lights, don't we? That I always say when I'm talking to audiences about Handel, that he had that great knack of just writing a great tune, isn't it? You know, and that's what your aria, I think, particularly, it's just a great tune. But as you say, with the kind of da capo, with the repeating of arias, which, as we know, happens a lot in Handel's music, it opens up the door for, you know, doing lots of exciting things with it. So that's absolutely fantastic. And Giulio Cesare as well is a big one for me, because it's actually the first Handel opera I ever saw. I saw in 2011, I think it was. So Opera North, actually, John, when we used to go over there quite a lot. So that was a fantastic production as well. So it'd be great to hear those two opera arias as part of our Heroic Handel project. So thanks for setting the scene on those. Two final little questions, really. John first. Talking about Baroque music in general, obviously we sing mostly Baroque music. We do a little bit of Renaissance music now and again with Iberacum. And obviously when sometimes, very occasionally these days, we do a little bit of modern music. We've had pieces written for us by our friend Nils Greenhow, the composer, and great singer, of course, as well. But Baroque music's our big thing. So I guess my kind of overarching question I'm asking here, John, is what makes you kind of enjoy singing Baroque music? What maybe makes it different to singing other repertoire?
I think one of the crucial things is definitely a sense of freedom. It's the simple fact that you know that when you're about to sing something that's Baroque, you don't have to do exactly what's written, because indeed that wasn't the approach for any musician, right? You know, the written score presumably became much more imprinted literally in performance over centuries. But so there kind of is that, you're like, you know, I can just add in a little trill here, or I can do this bit quiet, I can do this bit loud. So you can kind of shape it to how you like. So I think it's the freedom, which you know, a lot of people might relate that to, say, jazz and other types of music, just to the kind of expressive freedom, and the music is so well constructed that some of the times it feels like it's singing itself.
Same thing from an instrumentalist point of view, actually, with me playing the trumpet. You're right in that you've got that real sense of freedom, and I say nothing. This is always a funny phrase, but I would say nothing is actually ever wrong. Obviously, it sometimes is, but
Yeah.
you can kind of play that attitude, can't you? And that's a good thing with, you know, being able to take risks. I think is really, really good. And Lottie, same thing to you with this music in mind.
I think, I mean, also the freedom is great, but I'll never forget something that a music teacher once said to me. Actually, my singing teacher, when I was studying at the Royal Academy, she said that Handel and Baroque music was the pop music of its day. And I really feel that, particularly with the influence of dance forms. It feels like it's a real physical experience when you sing Baroque music, because it's so based on dance rhythms that I feel like I can express myself musically, but also it feels like it has a real physical side to it. Of course, like John said, also the opportunity to really put some of your own personality and style into it when you can ornament and make variations with dynamics and articulation. That's really exciting. So all in all, it just feels like a really fun experience, and yeah, something that you can express yourself and give part of your personality with.
Really interesting answers from both of you. That's perfect. That's really great. I'm going to go off piece through the question, so it's an easy one. I read an article the other day about virtual concerts and things, which is on the Guardian, and the kind of positives and negatives of them, and how some musicians were a little bit sick of doing click track recordings, and others were seeing it as a real positive. So. How, you know, it's a completely different ball game, isn't it, to performing in person and kind of bouncing off each other when we're in the room with each other. So it'd be really interesting to hear what you thought of how, you know, doing the click track thing and everything. Because I know from my point of view, you know, when you're playing along with those headphones on, and I almost feel I'm even more picky than before, that, you know, oh, that note is a little bit flat, I'm going to have to redo the whole thing again. Like, tell me about your experiences with that, and maybe the challenges or positives or negatives. Anything goes, really. John, what would you say?
In an effort to try and be as constructive as possible, I think, but there are obstacles that we confront that we haven't really before as much, because classical music is much more of a live performance experience than recorded. Obviously, different types of music, you would be more used to that session environment. Obviously, we all here have session experience for all of our musical, history. But that one thing that, as you just said, you know, you make a mistake, or not necessarily a mistake, but not exactly as you want, and then you think, well, I've got to redo the whole thing, because we're not editing our tracks individually, you know. So what we sing in one take is what people hear. So it's that kind of challenge. It's sort of like, I guess I mean, it's simple that you just sort of do your best, right? But I don't know. I mean, I personally think that we can do a pretty good job of that, because we give, you know, polished performances all the time. So we can just replicate the same thing when we record. But I think, you know, we're just going to keep getting used to these click tracks and how to perform to our best in that situation. And I think it's quite a good thing for the classical music industry, actually, because we're just connecting with technology because we're forced to, you know.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I think, you know, I've not actually talked to singers about this. I obviously talked to a few instrumentalists about this. So Lottie, to you again, like, I appreciate it's probably very different having headphones on and singing. So your kind of overview of this, what would you say?
So having done lots of other types of recording sessions, not particularly classical music or baroque music or opera, it has been a real learning curve, and a real test of patience, just in terms of like what just happened, you know, neighbors making noise, or there's a lot of birds around here, so I've had a lot of birds cawing away during things. So that has been a real challenge, just really giving things enough time to get the best take that you possibly can. The thing that I really miss in terms of making live music as opposed to recording and putting everything together and having more of a tech focus, is just, I think there isn't really anything you can do to replicate the atmosphere in a room, the acoustic that you get, and the feeling when you're all performing in the same space and you get the harmonics and the acoustic around the sound, which I think is what is so special about acoustic music without any sort of microphones or technology that's enhancing things. It's a very human, personal interaction. So yeah, I miss that a lot. But it has been really fun exploring new ways of creating. You know, I've started making like videos myself, layering things in order to make it easier to record music to. So yeah, it's been very interesting, but not quite a replacement for our usual forum.
Absolutely, yeah, and hopefully we'll be back at some point at the end of this year in some form, whether that be in an empty church or whatever, and we're live streaming. Fingers crossed, something like that can happen. And then the final question really, non-musical, although it might be musical as well, is to obviously we've been in this lockdown situation and things are being lifted and what have you. So what are you kind of most looking forward to, really? John, first.
I mean, it sounds like an incredibly stereotypical English thing to do, but just to sit in a pub garden and just sat on a bench with a group of friends, just having a conversation. That it's so simple, but obviously we all know talking is important for your mental health, and but we all take it for granted. So just that, I would love that.
Absolutely. And Lottie?
Actually, mine's very similar. Obviously, I think the thing I miss most is collaborating with other musicians in person. Yeah, it's just you can't really beat it or recreate it in these kind of online forms. But also very, very similar to John. We live where there's quite a lot of nice countryside, so we're still doing walks as our exercise, but it doesn't feel quite as nice when you haven't got the nice pub lunch at the end to look forward to. So I am very much looking forward to that. Yeah, hopefully just enjoying the sunshine and being together with friends again. But, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, well, I know I've promised on numerous occasions that we'll have a big pizza party in my back garden when it's possible. Yeah. And you can all meet. We've been through lockdown with a new baby girl as well, so that's been a whole new experience for all of us. So yeah, same thing with you two. I can't wait until we can actually be making music, but more importantly, just as John says, sat on a bench having a pint or something would be fantastic.
Yeah, I mean anywhere really.
But thanks so much for doing this. I think we set the scene, I hope, for your great arias in the Heroic Handel concert on the 18th of July, and looking forward to hopefully having lots of people watching.